I never told my son about my $35,000 monthly salary. Daniel always believed we lived on just the basics. When he invited me to meet his girlfriend's parents, I wore my simplest clothes, faded jeans, a plain cotton blouse, and scuffed loafers that had seen better days. My silver-streaked black hair was pulled back into a practical bun, and I wore no jewelry except my wedding band. After 30 years as an executive, I knew appearances could be weaponized, and tonight, I was conducting a social experiment. "Mom, are you sure that's what you're wearing?" Daniel asked as he picked me up from my modest two-bedroom apartment in Queens. My multi-million-dollar penthouse in Manhattan remained our little secret, a corporate rental as far as he knew, where I house-sat occasionally when working late. "What's wrong with how I look?" I adjusted my blouse self-consciously. "Nothing. You look nice. It's just—" Daniel hesitated, his kind eyes, so like his father's, betraying his anxiety. "The Blackwells are kind of formal, and the restaurant is very upscale." "Ah," I nodded, suppressing a smile. If only he knew that I owned shares in Rossi's, the very upscale restaurant where we were meeting, or that Giovanni, the celebrity chef and owner, had come to me for startup capital 15 years ago when no bank would touch him. "I can change if you'd prefer." "No, no!" Daniel backtracked immediately, ever the considerate son. "You look fine. I'm just nervous. This is important to me. I really love Camilla." I squeezed his hand. "Then I'll love her too." During the taxi ride to Manhattan, Daniel briefed me on the Blackwells, information I already knew, courtesy of a discreet background check I'd run when he first mentioned Camilla's surname. Victor Blackwell, finance executive, old Boston money, Yale graduate. Margaret Blackwell, socialite, board member of several arts organizations, Vassar alumna. Their daughter, Camilla, had rebelled against the family's finance tradition to pursue art curation, the only detail that gave me hope for this dinner. "They're not bad people," Daniel insisted, though his clenched jaw suggested otherwise. "Just traditional." Translation: elitist, classist, and probably racist, especially toward a 58-year-old Latina woman they'd presume was a housekeeper or cashier. I'd met their type countless times over my 3-decade rise through the corporate world. They were usually the ones who asked me to fetch coffee in meetings until they realized I was the one approving their multi-million-dollar budgets. "I'm sure we'll get along wonderfully," I lied, patting his hand. Rossi's occupied the entire top floor of a renovated historical building in Tribeca. The maitre d', Paolo, who knew me well but had been instructed to maintain discretion tonight, glanced at my attire with momentary confusion before checking the reservation. "Ah, the Blackwell party. Right this way." I caught his subtle wink as he led us through the dimly lit restaurant with its spectacular skyline views. Heads turned at surrounding tables, not toward me, but toward my handsome son in his tailored suit. Daniel had inherited his father's height and my cheekbones, a combination that turned heads wherever he went. The Blackwells were already seated at one of the best tables, though not the best, which was permanently reserved under my name. Victor stood stiffly as we approached, his smile not reaching his eyes. Margaret remained seated, surveying me through narrowed eyes, taking in my simple clothes and practical shoes. Camilla, however, rose immediately with a genuine smile that transformed her delicate features. "Mrs. Rivera, I'm so happy to finally meet you." She embraced me warmly, ignoring her mother's pursed lips of disapproval. "Please, call me Martina," I replied, returning her embrace. Her sincerity was unmistakable, and I felt a wave of relief for Daniel's sake. "Mother, father, this is Daniel's mother, Martina Rivera," Camilla introduced me as we took our seats. "Victor Blackwell," her father extended a limp handshake, his gaze already drifting past me to scan the restaurant for more important people. "And my wife, Margaret." Margaret offered a cool nod. "How nice to meet you, Mrs. Rivera. Daniel has told us so little about you." Her emphasis on little hung in the air like a challenge. "Please, Martina is fine," I smiled, "and I'm sure you've been far too busy discussing your fascinating lives to dwell on mine." A server appeared with champagne. "Compliments of the house," he announced, pouring 4 glasses. Victor straightened, preening slightly. They must recognize me from the Bloomberg interview last week. I hid my smile behind a menu. The champagne was actually a standing order for any table I sat at, but I wasn't ready to reveal that card just yet. "So, Mrs. Rivera, Margaret began as the server departed. Daniel mentioned you work in… What was it again, dear? She directed this to my son, clearly assuming I couldn't answer for myself. Mom's in corporate finance, Daniel replied. She's been with the same company since before I was born. How quaint, Margaret remarked. Company loyalty is so rare these days. What position do you hold? I manage investments, I replied vaguely, sipping my champagne, a vintage I had personally selected for Rossi's wine list last year. Clerical work? Margaret pressed, her smile sharp. Something like that. I returned her smile with equal sharpness. Victor turned to Daniel, effectively dismissing me. Camilla tells us you teach literature at City College. Interesting choice. I've always believed private universities offer more opportunities, but I suppose public education is noble work. The condescension in his tone made Daniel's jaw tighten, but he responded politely. Actually, I find teaching first-generation college students incredibly rewarding. Many of my students are the first in their families to pursue higher education. Like you were the first in yours, I assume? Margaret interjected, glancing at me with barely disguised disdain. Before I could respond, Camilla jumped in. Daniel's dissertation on immigrant narratives in post-war American literature was published in 3 major academic journals. Mother. His department chair believes he'll be tenured within 5 years. Tenure at a public college, Victor mused, swirling his champagne. Well, security is important, I suppose, though the financial ceiling is rather low. The conversation continued in this vein through appetizers, subtle and not so subtle digs at Daniel's career choice, questions about my background framed as innocent curiosity, but designed to highlight my presumed lack of education and sophistication. And where did you grow up, Mrs. Rivera? Margaret asked as our entrees arrived. Your accent suggests somewhere south? Puerto Rico, I replied. San Juan. Ah, she nodded knowingly. And when did you arrive in the States? I was born a U.S. citizen, Mrs. Blackwell, I reminded her mildly. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. A flush crept up her neck. Of course. I simply meant, when did you move to the mainland? I attended MIT at 17, I said, watching her expression freeze. On scholarship. MIT, Victor repeated, suddenly paying attention. Engineering? Computer science and financial systems, I confirmed. It was quite new back then. Something flickered in Victor's eyes, a reassessment perhaps, but not enough to correct his overall impression. After all, plenty of educated women ended up in administrative roles, especially women of color in the 1980s. And your late husband? Margaret pivoted, clearly hoping for more ammunition. Daniel mentioned he passed when your son was young. He was a professor at Columbia, I said simply, feeling the familiar pang whenever Miguel was mentioned. Philosophy department. How did you manage as a single mother? She pressed. It must have been challenging with your limited resources. Daniel tensed beside me, but I placed a calming hand on his arm. I'd been waiting for this opening. We managed, I said with dignity. Daniel never lacked for anything that mattered. Margaret's smile turned triumphant, as if I'd confirmed her assumptions about our financial struggles. Victor had already lost interest again, scanning the restaurant until his gaze fixed on a distinguished man entering the private dining area. Isn't that Giovanni Rossi himself? He murmured to Margaret. I've been trying to get an introduction for months. His investment group is remarkably exclusive. Perhaps you should send over a drink, Margaret suggested. Make a connection. I checked my watch. The first course of my little social experiment was complete. Now it was time for the main dish. As if on cue, my phone rang. Excuse me, I said, glancing at my phone's screen. I should take this. Margaret's lips tightened in disapproval at this breach of etiquette, but I was already rising from my chair. Of course, Mom, Daniel said supportively. Take your time. I stepped away from the table but remained within earshot, deliberately. When testing someone's character, it's essential to control all variables. Rivera, I answered crisply, switching to my executive tone, the one Daniel had never heard me use. The voice on the other end belonged to my actual assistant, Sophia, who was calling as prearranged. This wasn't entirely a charade. The information was real, just timed for maximum impact. Yes, I understand the board's concerns, I said, my voice carrying just enough to reach our table. 30 million is significant exposure, but I believe the risk profile is manageable. I glanced back to see Victor's head tilt slightly in my direction. his banker's ears perking up at the mention of millions. "Tell Richardson I'll personally review the portfolio allocation before signing off," I continued. "The European markets are too volatile right now to move without proper hedging strategies." Margaret was now openly staring, confusion clouding her features as she tried to reconcile this conversation with the simple clerical worker she'd imagined me to be. "Yes, I'll be at the London office on Tuesday for the merger announcement. Have the jet ready by 9. I paused for effect. "And reschedule the Goldman Sachs meeting. Tell them I'll only commit to 30 minutes. Their last proposal wasn't worth more of my time." By now, both Blackwells were frozen in their seats, exchanging glances that mixed confusion with dawning alarm. Camilla looked puzzled, while Daniel appeared completely shocked, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. I ended the call and returned to the table, sitting down as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Sorry about that," I said mildly, picking up my fork. "Work never respects dinner hours." "That sounded important," Victor ventured, studying me with new intensity. I shrugged. "End of quarter adjustments, nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." "Did you say merger announcement?" he pressed, financial curiosity overriding his earlier dismissiveness. "Victor," Margaret warned, sensing potential embarrassment. I smiled pleasantly. "Just routine business." "At Goldman Sachs?" Victor continued, ignoring his wife's warning glance. "Among others," I replied vaguely, turning to Camilla. "This sea base is excellent. Is Giovanni using that Chilean supplier I recommended?" "You know Chef Rossi?" Margaret interrupted, her voice pitched higher than before. Before I could answer, Daniel found his voice. "Mom, what was that about a jet?" "Company transportation," I said, patting his hand reassuringly. "More efficient than commercial flights when time is critical." Victor leaned forward, reassessment visible in every line of his body. "Mrs. Rivera, what company did you say you work for?" "I didn't," I replied, taking a deliberate sip of wine. An awkward silence fell over the table, broken only by the arrival of our server to clear the entree plates. Margaret, attempting to regain her social footing, redirected the conversation to safer territory. "Camilla tells us you live in Queens, Mrs. Rivera. Such a diverse area." The way she pronounced diverse made it sound like a communicable disease. "I keep an apartment there," I acknowledged. "It's convenient for visiting Daniel's favorite childhood restaurants, though I spend most nights at my place in Manhattan." "You have 2 residences on a clerical salary?" Margaret couldn't help herself, skepticism bleeding through her forced smile. Daniel looked increasingly confused. "Mom, what's going on?" I reached for his hand. "I'm sorry for the confusion, mijo. I've never been entirely forthcoming about my work situation." "What your mother means," Victor interjected with newfound respect, "is that she appears to be more senior at her company than we understood." Margaret shot her husband an irritated glance, displeased by his obsequious tone. "Actually," I said calmly, "I don't work for the company. I founded it." Daniel's eyes widened. "You what?" "Rivera Financial Systems," I clarified. "I started it 30 years ago, shortly after you were born." Victor nearly choked on his wine. "Rivera Financial, the algorithmic trading platform? That's a multi-billion-dollar enterprise? 7.3 billion at last valuation," I confirmed, "though that's likely to increase after the London announcement." Silence descended again, this time profound. Daniel stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Camilla's expression shifted between surprise and something like vindication. Margaret looked as though she'd swallowed something sour, while Victor's face performed an uncomfortable dance between mortification and calculated networking opportunity. "But why?" Daniel began, struggling to process this revelation. "Why the apartment in Queens? Why drive a 15-year-old Toyota? Why let me believe we were just getting by?" "Values," I said simply. "Your father and I agreed before you were born. We wanted you to understand the worth of things beyond money, to recognize privilege without being defined by it. So all those times you said we couldn't afford something were choices, not limitations," I finished for him. "I wanted you to value education for knowledge, not credentials, to choose work for purpose, not prestige, to judge people by character, not net worth." My eyes drifted meaningfully toward the Blackwells. Margaret had the grace to flush, though Victor was already calculating angles, his embarrassment quickly giving way to opportunity. "Fascinating philosophy," he said with a newfound warmth that didn't reach his eyes. "I've always believed that character development is essential, regardless of financial circumstances." Camilla snorted softly, earning a sharp look from her mother. "Really, father?" she challenged. "Is that why you called Daniel's career choice a charming waste of potential last week?" "Camilla," Margaret hissed. "No, mother. I've listened to you both disparage Daniel's background since we started dating. You've made assumptions about his mother that were not only wrong, but deeply disrespectful." I felt a surge of appreciation for this young woman who clearly had more spine than her polished exterior suggested. "It's quite all right," I assured her. "First impressions can be misleading. That's why I find it useful to observe people when they believe they have the upper hand. It reveals character far more accurately than when they're trying to impress." Victor's smile became strained. "A clever social experiment, Mrs. Rivera." "Martina, please," I corrected him. "After all, we're practically family now." The tension at the table was palpable when a commotion near the entrance drew our attention. The restaurant had fallen strangely quiet as a distinguished man with salt and pepper hair made his way through the dining room. Giovanni Rossi himself was heading directly toward our table, and he was smiling at me. "Martina, mia cara amica." Giovanni's voice boomed across the restaurant as he approached our table with arms outstretched. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming tonight?" I rose to accept his enthusiastic embrace, the customary Italian kisses on both cheeks. "I wanted a quiet family dinner, Gio. No fuss." "No fuss? For you? Impossibile." He held me at arm's length, his famous face creased with genuine affection. "You're wearing jeans to my restaurant. What is this? Some kind of undercover mission?" From the corner of my eye, I could see Margaret Blackwell's expression oscillating between shock and calculation. Victor looked like a man who'd just discovered water in the desert. "Something like that," I admitted with a small smile. "Giovanni, I'd like you to meet my son, Daniel." Giovanni turned his megawatt charm toward Daniel, who stood to shake his hand, looking dazed. "Your son, Madre di Dio, he has Miguel's height, and your eyes. The last time I saw him, he was just a boy at your husband's memorial." Giovanni clasped Daniel's hand in both of his. "Your mother speaks of you constantly. The professor who changes lives, she says." Daniel's eyes darted to me, surprise, and something like wonder crossing his features. "She talks about me. Only all the time," Giovanni assured him. "Now who else do we have here?" "My girlfriend, Camilla Blackwell," Daniel introduced, finding his footing. "And her parents, Victor and Margaret Blackwell." Giovanni nodded politely to Camilla before his gaze settled on the Blackwells. I noticed the subtle shift in his demeanor, the warmth dialing down several degrees to professional courtesy. Giovanni had an uncanny memory for faces and names, particularly in New York's social circles. He knew exactly who they were. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell," he acknowledged with a slight inclination of his head. "I trust you're enjoying your evening?" "Absolutely magnificent," Victor gushed, extending his hand. "I've been trying to get a reservation here for months. Your culinary vision is unparalleled." Giovanni accepted the handshake briefly. "Thank you. Though I must say, had I known you were dining with Martina, I would have arranged something special." He turned back to me. "The usual table was available, you know. Paolo should have moved you immediately." "I specifically asked him not to," I explained. "We're celebrating Daniel and Camilla tonight, not business." "Ah, young love," Giovanni beamed at the couple. "Then you must allow me to send over something special for dessert. On the house, of course. You're too generous as always," I said. "For you, never enough." He patted my shoulder affectionately. "We still on for Sunday dinner?" "Of course. Daniel and Camilla will join us this week." "Perfetto. I'll bring that 82 Barolo we've been saving." "Daniel, your mother has been hosting Sunday dinners at her penthouse for our little group for, what is it now, 20 years? Sacred tradition." "Her penthouse?" Daniel repeated faintly. I shot Giovanni a look that said he was revealing too much, too fast. "Ah, I've said something wrong?" Giovanni glanced between us, realizing his mistake. "It's fine, Gio," I assured him. "We're having a night of revelations, it seems." "Then I shall add one more," he decided with a theatrical gesture. "The real reason I came to your table. The investors' meeting next week. I need your final decision on the Paris location. The space won't wait much longer." Victor Blackwell leaned forward slightly, financial interest visibly peaked. "Paris location?" Giovanni nodded absently, his attention still on me. "The expansion. 3 more Rossis in Europe next year. If my business partner here approves the capital allocation." He glanced at the Blackwells as an afterthought. Martina was my first investor when nobody would touch a hot-headed chef with big dreams and no collateral. Now she owns 40% of the restaurant group. Margaret's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. 35%, I corrected. I insisted you retain majority control, remember? Details. Giovanni waved a hand dismissively. What matters is, without you, there is no Rossi's empire, no Michelin stars, no line of gourmet products in every high-end store in America. He checked his watch. I must return to the kitchen, but please, stay for dessert and after-dinner drinks. Anything you want, it's on me tonight. Absolutely not, I countered. The last time you said that, you refused my money for 3 months. I'm paying for dinner, Gio. He laughed. We'll argue about it later, as always. With another affectionate squeeze of my shoulder, Giovanni nodded politely to the rest of the table. A pleasure meeting you all. Daniel, welcome home. Bring him to the kitchen before you leave, Martina. I have some new truffle dishes he must try. As Giovanni departed, a charged silence fell over our table. Daniel stared at me as if I were a stranger, while Camilla seemed to be suppressing a smile. The Blackwells looked like they'd been struck by lightning, stunned, disoriented, and vaguely singed. You, Victor finally managed, you're Giovanni Rossi's business partner? I took a sip of wine. Among other investments, yes. And you have a penthouse? Where you host Sunday dinners? Margaret's voice had climbed an octave. In Tribeca, I confirmed. Nothing extravagant. Just a place to gather friends. Friends like Giovanni Rossi, Victor clarified, his eyes calculating rapidly. And a few others, mostly people from the early days when we were all struggling to make our dreams work. I turned to Daniel. You've met some of them over the years, though I usually introduce them as work colleagues. Like Uncle James? Daniel asked, recognition dawning. The guy who helped me with college applications? Who always brought me books? I nodded. James Chen. He runs the largest tech venture capital firm in Silicon Valley now. And Aunt Rosa? Who taught me to make paella? Started as my executive assistant. Now she's COO of Rivera Financial. Daniel shook his head in wonder. All this time, I thought we were just getting by, that you worked for some financial firm in a back office somewhere. Which was exactly what I wanted you to think, I explained gently. Your father and I decided before you were born that we didn't want wealth to define your upbringing. Miguel grew up privileged in Madrid, and he saw how it warped his peers' sense of reality. We wanted something different for you. So, the apartment in Queens is really mine. I grew up in that neighborhood after we moved from San Juan. I kept it because it reminds me of where I came from. I smiled at him. And because the best empanadas in New York are still at Doña Carmen's on the corner. Victor cleared his throat, having regrouped from his initial shock. Martina, if I may, I had no idea we were in the presence of such an accomplished businesswoman. Your success story must be remarkable. The pivot was so transparent, I almost admired his recovery speed. Almost. Quite ordinary, really, I replied mildly. Just a lot of hard work and good fortune. And yet, you choose to downplay your success? Margaret's tone suggested this concept was utterly foreign to her worldview. I value privacy, I said simply. And I find people are more genuine when they don't know your net worth. My gaze met hers directly, the implication hanging between us like an indictment. The server arrived with our dessert menus, breaking the tension momentarily. As the others perused their options, Camilla leaned toward me. Thank you, she whispered. For what, dear? Her eyes flickered toward her parents, then back to me. For showing them who you really are, and for raising a son who never needed to know. Dessert arrived with the theatrical flair Giovanni was famous for, a parade of servers bearing elaborate confections that were definitely not on the regular menu. My favorite dulce de leche soufflé with gold leaf, Daniel's childhood passion for chocolate manifested as an architectural marvel, and tailored creations for Camilla and her parents that I suspected Giovanni had hastily conceptualized upon meeting them. Mom, Daniel said quietly as the servers departed, I feel like I don't even know you. The vulnerability in his voice made my heart ache. This revelation was never meant to hurt him. You know the parts that matter, I assured him, reaching for his hand. My values, my love for you, the lessons I hope to teach, the money, it's just a tool, not an identity. But your whole life, this secret career, these influential friends, weren't relevant to raising a kind, hard-working son who values people for who they are, not what they own. I squeezed his fingers. Would you have turned out differently if you'd grown up in a penthouse with a silver spoon? Probably, he admitted. But still, forgive me for interrupting. Victor cut in smoothly, having recovered his poise and clearly impatient with our family moment. But I believe I recognize your name now from the Financial Times profile last year. Rivera Financial Systems pioneered the algorithmic trading platform that now handles what? 30% of daily NASDAQ volume. 28%, I corrected, though we're more diversified now into cybersecurity and blockchain applications. Margaret leaned forward, social opportunity overpowering her earlier disdain. You simply must tell us how you did it, starting from, well, such humble beginnings. A true American success story. The condescension hadn't left her voice entirely. Humble beginnings, clearly a euphemism for my immigrant background. But now it was laced with acquisitive interest. I was no longer the working-class mother of her daughter's unfortunate romantic choice. I was a potential connection to be cultivated. Actually, I said, taking a deliberate bite of my soufflé, I'd much rather hear about Camilla's new exhibition. Daniel mentioned she's curating a show on emerging Latin American artists? Camilla brightened. Yes, it opens next month at the Rivera Gallery. She stopped suddenly, eyes widening as she made the connection. Wait, the Rivera Gallery in Chelsea. Is that named for my late husband? I confirmed. Miguel believed in supporting underrepresented artists. I established the gallery in his memory. The Rivera Gallery is yours? Camila looked stunned. That's the most prestigious showcase for Latin American art in New York. You didn't mention your girlfriend was a curator there, I said to Daniel, genuinely surprised. I didn't know, he replied, looking dazed. The Rivera connection I never put it together. Margaret's face had gone through several complex expressions during this exchange, finally settling on something resembling alarm. Camilla, darling, you never mentioned your gallery was connected to Daniel's family. I didn't know either, Mother, Camilla replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Quite a coincidence, isn't it? Victor, ever the strategist, was already adjusting his approach. Martina, I'm on the board of several arts organizations myself. Perhaps we could discuss potential collaborations between our foundations? I wasn't aware you had a foundation, Mr. Blackwell. Well, not formally established yet, but we contribute substantially to the arts. How generous, I murmured, knowing full well from my background research that the Blackwells' charitable giving amounted to the minimum required for the social circles they aspired to join. We're particularly interested in the Metropolitan Museum's new wing, Margaret interjected. The committee is quite selective, but with your connections, the Indigenous Americas wing? I interrupted. Yes, I'm familiar with the project. I believe they've finalized the major donor list already. What I didn't add was that I had quietly funded nearly 30% of the new wing, under the condition that curatorial control remain with Indigenous scholars, a stipulation that had irritated several old money families who wanted naming rights without relinquishing aesthetic control. Margaret's smile tightened. You seem very well informed. Mom's on the Mets board, Daniel said suddenly, or at least someone named M. Rivera is. I saw it on their annual report when I was researching for a paper. He turned to me. That's you, isn't it? I nodded, watching comprehension dawn on his face as years of scattered puzzle pieces suddenly formed a coherent picture. The children's literacy program in Queens, the scholarship fund at my high school, the anonymous donor who saved the community arts center. Each question came faster than the last. We can discuss all of this later, I suggested gently, conscious of the Blackwells' growing discomfort as they realized just how thoroughly they had misjudged the dynamics at play. I think it's wonderful, Camilla declared, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. All the good you've done while staying out of the spotlight. So different from... She caught herself, glancing guiltily at her parents. From how some approach philanthropy? I finished for her. As a social stepping stone rather than a responsibility? Victor cleared his throat. Different approaches serve different purposes. Indeed they do, I agreed. Impact versus image is always a balancing act. The implied critique hung in the air like smoke. Margaret's champagne glass made a sharp sound as she set it down too forcefully. Well, she said with brittle brightness, this evening has certainly been educational. Victor, didn't you want to speak with Chef Rossi before we leave? About that charity dinner? Yes, of course. Victor seized the excuse, already scanning for Giovanni. Perhaps we should... Oh, I'm sure he's busy in the kitchen, I interjected smoothly. But I'd be happy to arrange a meeting if you're interested in having Rossi's cater an event. He typically only does it for established charitable partners, but as Daniel's future in-laws, the presumption of a serious relationship between our children was deliberate, a small nudge to see how they'd respond now that the power dynamic had shifted. Margaret nearly choked. Future in-laws? They've only been dating 6 months. Mother, Camilla protested, flushing. I only meant, Margaret backtracked, that it's early days yet, though of course we're quite fond of Daniel. How quickly that fondness developed, I observed mildly. Daniel coughed to hide a smile, while Camilla looked torn between embarrassment and admiration. Perhaps we should order coffee, I suggested, signaling a server. And Daniel, you still haven't told me how you two met. I'd love to hear the story from both of you. As Daniel and Camilla launched into their meeting at a climate change symposium, he was presenting on environmental literature. She was organizing the accompanying art exhibition. I watched the Blackwells exchange glances. They were recalculating, reassessing, reconfiguring their approach to this dinner and to me. But it was too late. I had seen who they truly were when they thought I had nothing to offer. No amount of backpedaling could erase those first unguarded reactions. The coffee arrived, and with it, a small envelope personally delivered by Paolo. From Chef Rossi, he explained with a slight bow. I opened it to find a handwritten note. Kitchen tour whenever you're ready. And Martina, the look on their faces when they realized who you are? Priceless. Worth every penny of our investment. Gee. I tucked the note away with a small smile. The night was far from over, and I still had a few cards left to play. Giovanni has invited us for a kitchen tour, I announced, folding the note and slipping it into my pocket. It's quite an honor. He rarely allows visitors during service hours. Victor perked up immediately. All of us? That's what the note implies, I replied, though it didn't. Shall we? As we rose from the table, I noticed Margaret discreetly checking her reflection in a compact mirror, patting her immaculate coiffure. Victor straightened his designer tie. The transformation in their demeanor toward me was both predictable and vaguely amusing, like watching weather vanes spin in a changing wind. Paolo led us through the main dining room, past tables of New York elites who nodded respectfully as I passed. A famous film director raised his glass in silent greeting. The city's most powerful magazine editor smiled warmly. A tech billionaire actually stood to kiss my cheek and whisper, "Call me about that foundation proposal, Martina." I felt Daniel's questioning gaze but kept moving. The gradual revelation of my actual place in the world was clearly disorienting for him, but I hoped he understood why I'd kept it from him for so long. Success changes how people see you, and often not for the better. The kitchen was a gleaming cathedral of stainless steel and orchestrated chaos. Line cooks moved with balletic precision, calling orders in the clipped shorthand of high-end restaurants. Heat and aromas enveloped us: saffron, truffle, caramelized sugar, reduced wine. "Martina!" Giovanni called out, arms wide as he approached. "Welcome to my domain!" "Beautiful as always, Gio," I replied, accepting another exuberant embrace. "The team looks exceptional tonight. Only the best for my investors," he winked. "Come, let me show you the new pastry station you approved in the last budget." Victor maneuvered himself closer. "Chef Rossi, I must say what an extraordinary operation you've built. My firm often advises restaurant groups on expansion strategies, and your model is truly exemplary." Giovanni regarded him with the polite disinterest of a man who has fielded thousands of similar approaches. "Very kind. The secret is quality control and passionate people." He turned to Daniel and Camilla, the young lovers. "Come see where the magic happens." As Giovanni led them toward the pastry section, an elegant older woman emerged from a small office near the back. Dressed in impeccable chef whites with 3 stars embroidered on the collar, she made her way directly toward me. "Martina, no one told me you were here tonight." Her Italian accent was more pronounced than Giovanni's, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Sophia," I embraced her warmly. "Last-minute plans. You remember my son, Daniel?" Sophia beamed at Daniel. "Of course, the professor. How is the book coming along?" Daniel looked confused. "Book? Your collection of environmental literature essays," Sophia prompted. Your mother mentioned you had a publisher interested. I haven't told her about that yet, Daniel said slowly, turning to me with a questioning look. I shrugged slightly. I have my sources. Your mother is very proud, Sophia assured him. Now, who are these others? I made the introductions. Sophia Rossi, Giovanni's mother and the original culinary genius behind Rossi's. Sophia, this is Camilla Blackwell, Daniel's girlfriend, and her parents, Victor and Margaret. Sophia assessed them with the shrewd eye of a woman who had survived war, immigration, and the male-dominated culinary world. Her gaze lingered on Margaret's designer outfit and Victor's expensive watch. Ah, the art curator, she said to Camilla, ignoring her parents completely. Your exhibition on female Mexican surrealists was magnificent. Such vision in one so young. Camilla blushed with pleasure. You saw my exhibition? Martina took me. We try to support emerging curators with authentic perspectives. Sophia linked her arm through mine with the easy familiarity of old friends. Martina and I, we understand what it means to be underestimated, to be dismissed because of accent, background, gender. This is why we support young talents like you. Margaret stepped forward, determined not to be sidelined. Mrs. Rossi, your son's restaurant is simply extraordinary. We're members of several exclusive supper clubs in Boston, and I must say, nothing compares. Sophia's smile didn't reach her eyes. How nice for you. Giovanni rejoined us, carrying small plates of something that made even the seasoned chefs nearby pause to watch. My newest experiment, he announced, offering the first taste to me. Black truffle soufflé with gold-infused crème anglaise. Not on the menu yet, still perfecting it for the James Beard dinner next month. I took a bite and closed my eyes, savoring the explosion of flavors. Sublime, Gio. Though perhaps a touch less vanilla in the anglaise, it's competing with the earthiness of the truffle. He snapped his fingers. Exactly what I was thinking. Sophia, try. His mother sampled the dish and nodded in agreement. Martina is right. Always right about flavors, this one. Should have been a chef instead of a financial genius. I leave the culinary genius to you both, I laughed. I just provide the capital. And the palate, Giovanni insisted. Remember when you convinced me to change the signature risotto? Everyone thought I was crazy to listen to my investor about cooking, but you were right. Victor watched this exchange with increasing interest, clearly reassessing my relationship with the Rossis. No longer just an investor, but clearly part of their inner circle. A distinction worth its weight in gold in New York social currency. Martina, he ventured, perhaps you could introduce us to Chef Rossi's sommelier sometime. Margaret and I are expanding our wine collection, and professional guidance would be invaluable. Before I could respond, a young sous chef approached Giovanni with urgent questions about a VIP order. He excused himself, and Sophia followed after giving me a knowing look that said she understood exactly what was happening with the Blackwells. Left momentarily with just our family group, Daniel turned to me. Mom, he said quietly, all these people know more about my life than I knew about yours. The hurt in his voice was unmistakable. Camilla squeezed his hand supportively. Only the highlights, mijo, I assured him. The things a proud mother mentions to old friends. Never the private things between us. But why all the secrecy? The separate lives? The pretending to be less than you are? I considered my answer carefully, aware that the Blackwells were listening intently, despite pretending to admire the kitchen's design. When your father died, I began. RFS was just taking off. Suddenly I was a single mother with a 3-year-old and a company that demanded everything. I watched other successful people's children become entitled, spoiled, defined by their parents' wealth rather than their own character. I touched his cheek gently. Miguel and I had always agreed that if we were blessed with success, we wouldn't let it change how we raised our child. After he was gone, that promise became even more important. I wanted you to become a man he would be proud of, one who values work, empathy, and integrity over status or possessions. But the apartment in Queens? The budget discussions? Making me work summer jobs when you could have given you everything? I finished. And what lesson would that have taught? That you deserved more than your classmates simply because of who your mother was? Camilla spoke up unexpectedly. She's right, Daniel. Look at me. At how hard I've had to fight against my parents' expectations to do meaningful work instead of just managing family money or marrying strategically. Margaret made a small, offended sound, but didn't contradict her daughter. Your mother gave you something far more valuable than wealth, Camilla continued. She gave you the chance to become yourself without the burden of privilege. Daniel was quiet for a moment, processing. The community college scholarship fund that helped half my high school class, that was you, wasn't it? I nodded. Education changed my life. I wanted to pay it forward. And my teaching fellowship? The one that mysteriously appeared when the department lost funding? I may have made a phone call, I admitted. But you earned that position on merit, Daniel. I only ensured the money was available. Giovanni returned, clapping his hands together. Now for the real treat, the wine cellar. Victor, you mentioned an interest in fine wines? As we followed him toward a discreet elevator, I felt Daniel's hand on my arm, holding me back slightly. I'm still processing all this, he said quietly, but I think I understand why you did it. Do you forgive me for the deception? I asked, suddenly vulnerable. His expression softened. There's nothing to forgive, Mom, but I have about 1,000 questions. I smiled, relief washing over me. And I promise to answer everyone, starting tomorrow at brunch, at my actual home if you'd like to see it. I'd like that, he said, then added with a hint of his father's wry humor, as long as you're paying. Apparently, I've been misled about our financial situation. For the first time that evening, I laughed without reservation, the sound echoing through Giovanni's gleaming kitchen like a release. The elevator descended silently, carrying our group beneath the bustling restaurant to Rossi's legendary wine cellar, a climate-controlled sanctuary that housed over 10,000 bottles and was rarely shown to ordinary patrons. As the doors opened, the Blackwells audibly gasped. Illuminated by subtle lighting, the cellar stretched before us like a cathedral dedicated to viniculture. Floor-to-ceiling racks of bottles from every premium wine region in the world, organized by country, region, vineyard, and vintage. The centerpiece was a long, polished table made from reclaimed Italian oak wine barrels, surrounded by 12 leather chairs. My pride and joy, Giovanni announced, leading us inside. Martina helped design it during our first expansion. The concept was all Giovanni's, I demurred. I merely suggested the private tasting room would benefit from proper acoustics for music. Wine and melody share so many characteristics. Victor moved immediately to examine the nearest rack, eyes widening at a row of Chateau Latour. 1982. And? Is that a 1961? Excellent eye, Giovanni approved. The 61 is exceptional, though I prefer the 59 for its subtler finish. Margaret drifted toward the champagne section, fingers hovering near bottles that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Do you offer private tastings for select clients? The emphasis on select made her meaning clear. She was angling for exclusive access. Only for investors and personal friends, Giovanni replied, watching her reaction closely. Martina holds the record for identifying wine regions in blind tastings, 27 consecutive correct identifications, down to the specific vineyard for 15 of them. You never mentioned you were an enophile, Margaret said to me, unable to mask her surprise. There's quite a bit I haven't mentioned, I responded mildly. Daniel was examining a separate section where several bottles stood encased in individual glass displays. What are these? He asked. Giovanni's face brightened. Ah! The museum pieces, historically significant vintages we preserve rather than consume. That 1945 Romanée Conti was rescued from a Nazi collection after the war. The 1856 Madeira survived the San Francisco earthquake. And this, he pointed to a dusty bottle with a handwritten label, was pressed by my great-grandfather in Tuscany before the family emigrated. Fascinating. Camilla breathed, clearly appreciating the historical significance beyond mere monetary value. Giovanni guided us to the tasting table, where a server had quietly appeared with 5 crystal glasses and a bottle already breathing in a decanter. A special selection for tonight, Giovanni explained, nodding to the server to pour. From my private collection, not even on the restaurant's list. The deep burgundy liquid sparkled in the subdued lighting as it filled each glass. Victor leaned forward eagerly, while Margaret positioned herself more prominently, as if a photographer might materialize to capture her in this exclusive setting. A 1996 Vega Sicilia Unico, Giovanni announced. Spanish, not Italian, a nod to Miguel's homeland. I felt a rush of emotion at this thoughtful tribute to my late husband. Giovanni raised his glass. to Miguel Rivera, philosopher, humanitarian, and the man who had the good sense to marry Martina. We still miss him at our Sunday dinners. To Miguel, I echoed softly, touching my glass to his. Everyone sipped, but I noticed Daniel's eyes glistening as he lowered his glass. He had been only 3 when his father died, too young to form lasting memories of his own. Every mention of Miguel was precious to him, a puzzle piece in understanding his own identity. "This is extraordinary," Victor declared, examining the wine with newfound respect. "The complexity, the balance." "Miguel discovered this vineyard before it became internationally acclaimed," I explained. "We visited during our honeymoon. He was always finding beauty in overlooked places." "Like Queens?" Daniel suggested with a small smile. "Exactly like Queens," I confirmed, returning his smile. "Your father believed authenticity existed more readily in places without pretension." Margaret shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing the implied criticism. "Speaking of overlooked treasures," Giovanni interjected smoothly, "Martina, have you told them about your foundation's new initiative?" I shot him a look. He knew perfectly well I hadn't. "Which one?" I asked cautiously. "The First Generation College Network," Giovanni prompted. "Daniel should be particularly interested given his teaching focus." Daniel turned to me. "What's this?" I sighed, recognizing Giovanni's not-so-subtle attempt to further illustrate the gap between my public modesty and private philanthropy. "It's a new program providing comprehensive support for first-generation college students," I explained. "Beyond just scholarships, housing subsidies, technology, professional clothing for interviews, healthcare coverage, and mentoring networks. We're piloting it at 5 universities next fall." "That's incredible," Daniel said. "We've been trying to get funding for something similar in my department for years. The administration keeps saying there's no budget." "Which universities are in the pilot?" Camilla asked. "CUNY, Cal State, Howard, UT Austin, and Northeastern," I replied, watching Victor and Margaret exchange glances at the mention of the prestigious Boston University, where the Blackwell name adorned a minor building. "Northeastern is on our donor list as well," Victor commented, attempting to establish common ground. "Perhaps we could discuss coordinating our giving for greater impact." Giovanni suppressed a smile, knowing as well as I did that the Blackwell's giving was nominal compared to my foundation's endowment. "The program is actually fully funded for the first 5 years," I explained. "But we're always open to partners who share our philosophy about educational equity." Educational equity. "Yes, absolutely," Victor agreed hastily, though his uncertain tone suggested this was not a concept central to his philanthropy. Margaret, perhaps sensing they were out of their depth, attempted to redirect. "Giovanni, this wine cellar would be perfect for a private fundraiser. Do you ever host charity events here?" "Occasionally," Giovanni acknowledged, "for causes close to our hearts. Our Arts Foundation is planning a gala next spring," she continued, undeterred. "Perhaps—" "Mother," Camilla interrupted, her patience visibly fraying, "can we not turn every conversation into a networking opportunity? We're here as Daniel's family, not to secure social advantages." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Victor looked mildly embarrassed, while Margaret appeared genuinely shocked at her daughter's rebuke. "I merely thought," Margaret began stiffly, "given our shared interests in philanthropy." "Is it philanthropy when the primary goal is having your picture in the society pages?" Camilla challenged, years of frustration evident in her tone. "When you measure the success of a charity event by who attended, rather than what it accomplished." "Camilla," Victor warned. "No, Father. I've watched this my entire life. The calculating, the positioning, the using of people for their connections." She turned to me. "I apologize, Mrs. Rivera. This is why I was so drawn to Daniel when we met. His genuine passion for his work, his students, his complete lack of pretense, qualities I now see he learned from you." The raw honesty of her words hung in the air. Daniel reached for her hand, pride evident in his expression. "No apology needed," I assured her. "Authenticity is always uncomfortable for those unaccustomed to it." Giovanni, sensing the tension, rose smoothly. "Perhaps we should return upstairs for some digestives. I have a 20-year age grappa that pairs wonderfully with philosophical reckonings." This broke the tension slightly, earning a small laugh from Daniel and Camilla. As we moved toward the elevator, Margaret drew back, linking her arm through Victor's with the practiced move of a couple accustomed to presenting a united front. In the confined space of the elevator, I studied their reflected expressions in the polished door, calculation, reassessment, and the dawning realization that this evening had fundamentally altered the power dynamic they had expected to control. When the doors opened to the main restaurant level, Giovanni's maitre d' was waiting with a message. "Mrs. Rivera, your call with Tokyo is confirmed for 11 p.m. Shall I arrange for the car to take you home to your office setup?" Another piece of my compartmentalized life exposed. Daniel looked at me questioningly. "International markets," I explained. "Some things can't wait for morning." "Will you need the briefing documents reviewed before the call?" he asked. For a moment I hesitated. The automatic response would be to maintain the separation, to keep my work life distant from my son as I always had. But perhaps it was time for a different approach. "Actually," I said, making a decision, "would you like to sit in on the call? It might interest you. It's about our sustainable investment initiative in the Pacific Rim." Daniel's surprise gave way to genuine interest. "Really? You'd want me there?" "I would," I confirmed. "It's time you saw this side of my life, if you're interested." As we made our way back to the main dining area, I caught Camilla's approving smile and the Blackwells' thinly veiled consternation at this further evidence of my professional standing. The evening had become something none of us had anticipated, a cascade of revelations that was reshaping all our relationships, and we hadn't even reached the after-dinner drinks. The restaurant had grown quieter, the dinner crowd thinning as we returned to the main floor. Giovanni excused himself to attend to kitchen matters, promising to rejoin us for a final digestive. As we approached our table, now reset with elegant snifters and a selection of aged spirits, I noticed several prominent New Yorkers nodding respectfully in my direction. "Martina!" A silver-haired woman in an impeccably tailored suit approached, air-kissing both my cheeks. "I thought that was you. The Morgan Library board meeting has been moved to Wednesday. Will that conflict with your UN panel?" "Elena," I greeted the former Secretary of State warmly. "Wednesday works perfectly. The UN commitment is Thursday morning." Elena turned her attention to Daniel. "This must be your son, the professor. Your mother speaks of you constantly." Daniel shook her hand, visibly processing yet another high-profile connection. "It's an honor to meet you, Madam Secretary." "Elena, please. We're all friends here." She glanced at the Blackwells with polite curiosity. "Daniel's girlfriend, Camilla Blackwell, and her parents, Victor and Margaret," I introduced. "From Boston." "Blackwell," Elena repeated, searching her mental database. "Are you related to Senator Blackwell from Massachusetts?" "A distant cousin," Victor replied, straightening importantly. "Though we see each other at family functions." "How nice," Elena said dismissively, clearly placing them in the category of people attempting to claim proximity to power. She turned back to me. "Don't forget about James's retirement dinner next month. The president confirmed he'll attend." "I've cleared my schedule," I assured her. "I'm giving the keynote." With another air kiss, Elena departed, leaving a wake of charged silence. The Blackwells appeared simultaneously impressed and discomfited by this casual reference to the president. "You're giving a keynote at an event the president is attending?" Daniel asked as we took our seats. "James Chen is retiring from public service," I explained. "We've been friends since MIT. He's been invaluable on technology policy." Margaret leaned forward. "You know the president personally?" "We've crossed paths at various functions," I replied vaguely, unwilling to detail my actual role advising on financial technology regulations. Washington is a small world in certain circles. A server appeared with a tray of grappa selections, temporarily diverting attention. As the conversation shifted to safer topics, I watched Daniel process the continuing revelations about my life. His expression had moved from shock to curiosity, and now to something resembling appreciation. "So," he said during a lull, "all those times you told me we couldn't afford something were technically true," I finished for him. "I could afford it, but we, meaning you and I as a family unit, had a budget I was committed to maintaining. Like when I wanted that expensive gaming system for my 13th birthday, and you said we needed to save for college instead. You ended up with the gaming system for Christmas anyway," I reminded him, "after you volunteered at the community center for 3 months. You said a relative helped pay for it," Daniel recalled. "The relative was my investment portfolio," I admitted, "but the principle was what mattered. You earned something you wanted through service to others, not because your mother could easily write a check." Victor cleared his throat. "A creative approach to parenting," His tone suggested he found it unnecessarily complicated rather than principled. It worked for us, I replied simply. Clearly, Camilla interjected, squeezing Daniel's hand. Daniel is the most grounded, compassionate person I've ever met. Now I understand where that comes from. Margaret's smile tightened at this implicit criticism of their own parenting philosophy. Different approaches for different families, I suppose. Indeed, I agreed. Results speak for themselves. My phone vibrated with a text message. Glancing at it discreetly, I saw it was from Giovanni. Emergency in kitchen. Need to stay back, but Sophia says to remind you about Sunday dinner. Bring Daniel and Camilla. I relayed this message, adding, Giovanni extends his apologies but needs to address something in the kitchen. He hopes you enjoyed the tour. It was fascinating, Victor replied, clearly disappointed to lose access to the celebrity chef. Perhaps another time we could discuss that charity event Margaret mentioned. Before I could respond, my phone rang, the specialized tone I'd assigned to urgent business matters. Excuse me, I said, checking the screen. I need to take this. Stepping slightly away from the table but remaining within earshot, again, deliberately, I answered. Rivera. It was my actual CFO this time, calling with legitimate questions about the Tokyo negotiations. As I spoke, I was acutely aware of the Blackwells listening intently, their earlier dismissiveness now replaced by calculated interest. Yes, offer the 30% stake, but maintain operational control, I instructed. The regulatory concerns in the Asian markets require our direct oversight. No, we won't compromise on the ethical investing clauses. If they push back, remind them our ESG compliance framework is what attracted them in the first place. I concluded the call and returned to the table. Apologies. Business never respects dinner hours. Sounds like significant negotiations, Victor observed, unable to contain his curiosity. Expansion into Asian markets, I confirmed. Nothing that can't be finalized tomorrow. Your company handles international investments of that scale in-house? He pressed. Not through larger institutions? We are the larger institution, I corrected gently. Rivera Financial Systems manages over $180 billion in assets globally. Victor nearly choked on his grappa. The figure clearly exceeded what he had estimated based on public information. Mother, Daniel interjected, remember you mentioned a Tokyo call at 11? It's nearly 10:30. You're right, I acknowledged, checking my watch. We should probably wrap up soon. I'll accompany you, Daniel offered, if the invitation to observe still stands. Of course, I assured him. Camilla is welcome as well, if she's interested in sustainable investment practices. I'd love to, Camilla replied enthusiastically, before glancing at her parents. If that's all right with you both? I know we had plans for brunch tomorrow. Margaret's expression tightened. Actually, we were hoping to discuss some family matters in private. The implication was clear. They needed to reassess their strategy regarding Daniel, now that his connection to me had revealed unexpected advantages. Another time, perhaps, I suggested smoothly, signaling for the check. The server appeared immediately. Mrs. Rivera, your meal has been taken care of by Chef Rossi. Absolutely not, I protested. We go through this every time, and I always tell Giovanni. He was quite insistent, the server continued apologetically. He said, and I quote, tell her this one is for Miguel. He would have enjoyed the theater of tonight. The mention of my late husband softened my objection. Very well. Please tell Giovanni I'll settle this on Sunday. As we prepared to leave, the dynamics had shifted palpably. The Blackwells, who had arrived expecting to evaluate a simple working-class mother, were now recalculating their approach to both me and Daniel. The condescension had evaporated, replaced by an eager deference that I found more distasteful than their original disdain. This has been such a revealing evening, Margaret commented as we gathered our belongings. We must have you over to our home in Boston soon. Our circle would be fascinated by your remarkable journey. As an exotic specimen to study? I asked pleasantly. Or as a potential donor to your social causes? Margaret flushed. I didn't mean, it's quite all right, I assured her. I've been underestimated most of my career. It's proved advantageous in ways you might not expect. Victor attempted damage control. Martina, regardless of how this evening began, I hope we can move forward on better footing. Daniel is clearly important to Camilla, which makes you important to our family. The naked calculation in his tone was almost impressive in its transparency. How interesting that my importance emerged only after you learned about my financial status, I observed. maintaining my pleasant smile. One might almost think there's a correlation. Daniel suppressed a smile, while Camilla looked simultaneously mortified and vindicated. Mother, father, she said firmly, I think it's time we called it a night. Mrs. Rivera, Martina, thank you for a truly unforgettable evening. The pleasure was mine, I replied sincerely. And please, call me Martina. After all, I added with a meaningful glance at her parents, I have a feeling we'll be seeing much more of each other. The implication that their daughter's relationship with my son might be serious, regardless of their approval, was not lost on the Blackwells. As we exited the restaurant together, I watched them process this subtle shift in power with a mixture of amusement and caution. The real test of their character would come in the days ahead. People could perform graciousness when it served their interests, but sustained respect, especially toward those they had initially dismissed, revealed far more about their true nature. Meanwhile, Daniel walked beside me, occasionally shaking his head in lingering disbelief. Ready for Tokyo? I asked him lightly. Ready for the truth, he replied. The whole truth this time, Mom. And for the first time in decades, I felt ready to give it to him. The sleek black Mercedes sedan waited at the curb, my regular driver Carlos holding the door open with practiced discretion. This was another fragment of my actual life, the car service I used for late meetings and airport transfers, but had never allowed to pick me up from our family apartment in Queens. Good evening, Mrs. Rivera, Carlos greeted me. To the penthouse? Yes, please, I confirmed. And we'll have additional passengers tonight. The Blackwells stared at the luxury vehicle, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Victor's gaze lingered on the discreet MB logo embossed on the headrests. Not a standard car service, but a private executive arrangement. Perhaps we should share a ride, Margaret suggested eagerly. Our hotel is in Midtown. I'm afraid we're headed in the opposite direction, I replied smoothly. But I'd be happy to have Carlos arrange another car for you. Before they could respond, Camilla stepped forward. Actually, if it's all right, I'd like to join Daniel at your place for the Tokyo call, she added quickly. The sustainable investment aspects could be relevant to a new exhibition I'm planning on environmental art. Margaret's expression tightened. Camilla, we had plans to discuss. We can talk tomorrow, Mother, Camilla interrupted firmly. This is a unique opportunity. The professional excuse was transparent, but I appreciated her diplomacy. You're welcome to join us, I assured her. There's plenty of room. As Daniel and Camilla slid into the spacious back seat, I exchanged brief goodbyes with the Blackwells, promising to arrange that second car. Once the door closed behind us, the quiet luxury of the vehicle enveloped us. Butter-soft leather, privacy partition, ambient lighting, and the subtle scent of sandalwood. Daniel ran his hand over the leather seat. So this is how you actually get around. Only for work, I clarified. My Toyota is perfectly adequate for daily life. The 15-year-old Corolla with the dent in the bumper? He shook his head in wonder. All this time, I thought we were being economical because we had to be. We were being economical, I insisted, just by choice rather than necessity. Carlos pulled smoothly into traffic as I pressed a button to raise the privacy partition. Once we were alone, Daniel turned to me with 1,000 questions in his eyes. Why? He asked simply. Why what? Specifically, I countered. Why the separate lives? Why keep my success from you? Why maintain the apartment in Queens when I could afford much more? All of it, Daniel said. The whole deception. Not deception, I corrected gently. Compartmentalization, with purpose. Camilla reached for Daniel's hand. I think it was beautiful, she offered. Protecting him from the burdens of privilege. That's part of it, I acknowledged. But it wasn't just about protecting Daniel. It was about honoring Miguel's wishes too. The mention of his father softened Daniel's expression. Dad wanted this? The separate lives? When I became pregnant with you, Rivera Financial was just taking off, I explained, watching the city lights flash by outside the window. Miguel and I had long discussions about what it would mean to raise a child amid growing wealth and success. He had seen what happened to the children of his wealthy colleagues in academia. The entitlement, the distorted sense of reality, the pressure to maintain appearances. Dad was from money himself, wasn't he? Daniel asked. You've mentioned his family in Madrid had some kind of estate. Old Spanish money, I confirmed. Not enormous wealth, but significant privilege. Miguel rejected much of it to pursue philosophy and teaching. He believed excessive comfort dulled the moral imagination. Daniel considered this. So keeping me in the dark about your success was some kind of moral education? Not in the dark, I corrected. Just not in the spotlight. We wanted you to develop your own identity, separate from wealth or status, to find purpose in work itself rather than in its rewards. By letting me believe we were just getting by, there was still a hint of hurt in his voice. By letting you believe that comfort required effort, I clarified, that resources were finite and choices had consequences, that you weren't entitled to more than others simply by accident of birth. The car turned onto a tree-lined street in Tribeca, slowing as it approached a discreet luxury building with an understated awning and uniformed doorman. And it worked, Camilla interjected, squeezing Daniel's hand. Look at you, teaching at a public university, mentoring first-generation college students, turning down corporate jobs to do work with actual meaning. Do you think you'd have made the same choices if you'd grown up with private jets and household staff? Daniel's expression suggested he was genuinely considering this for the first time. Maybe not, he admitted. But still, the lies about our finances, the separate apartments, the whole double life. After Miguel died, I said softly, maintaining those boundaries became even more important to me. I was suddenly a single mother running a rapidly expanding company. I watched the children of other executives become symbols of their parents' success. Designer clothes, private schools where teachers dared not discipline them, summer programs chosen for networking potential rather than genuine interest. I reached for Daniel's free hand. I wanted something different for you. A childhood where you were valued for who you were becoming, not for what I had achieved. Where you learned the worth of money by earning it, not by having it handed to you. The car stopped in front of my building. Through the window I saw Thomas, the night doorman, moving to open our door. Is this really where you live? Daniel asked, staring up at the elegant pre-war building. For the past 15 years, I confirmed, though I kept the Queen's apartment too, for Sunday visits to Doña Carmen's empanada shop, if nothing else. As we exited the car, Thomas greeted me warmly. Good evening, Mrs. Rivera. Shall I let Mr. Patel know you'll be ready for the Tokyo call in your office? Yes, thank you, Thomas. And please add Mr. Rivera and Ms. Blackwell to my permanent visitor list. Of course, ma'am. The lobby was a study in understated luxury. Marble floors, Art Deco fixtures, fresh flowers arranged in a massive central urn. The concierge nodded respectfully from behind his desk as we crossed to the private elevator that served only the penthouse and one other apartment. This is surreal, Daniel murmured as the elevator ascended smoothly. Finding out your mother is essentially Bruce Wayne. That startled a laugh from me. Hardly, though I do have a fondness for expensive technology. Does this mean I get a Batmobile for Christmas? He teased, the humor suggesting he was beginning to process the evening's revelations. You get what you've always gotten, I replied, matching his lighter tone. Something thoughtful but not extravagant, and the satisfaction of knowing your mother loves you. The elevator opened directly into my foyer, a space larger than our entire Queen's apartment, with soaring ceilings, museum-quality artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a breathtaking view of the Hudson River and city skyline. Daniel froze just inside the entrance, taking in the space with widening eyes. Camilla gasped softly beside him. Welcome home, I said quietly, to the life I've kept separate from our Sundays in Queens. It's beautiful, Camilla breathed, moving toward the windows, but not ostentatious. It feels personal. She'd identified exactly what I'd aimed for when designing the space with Miguel years ago. Comfort without extravagance, quality without showiness, art selected for meaning rather than investment potential. Daniel moved slowly through the living room, pausing at photographs I'd never displayed in our other home. Me receiving awards, speaking at conferences, standing with business and world leaders. His gaze lingered on one in particular, a younger me holding infant Daniel, with Miguel's arm around us both, the three of us laughing in the sunlight. I've never seen this photo, he said. It was taken at our house in the Hamptons, I explained. The summer before your father died. We had a house in the Hamptons? The revelations clearly weren't finished. Still do, I confirmed. I've maintained it exactly as it was when Miguel was alive. His books are still on the nightstand. I go there sometimes when I need to feel close to him. Daniel touched the photograph gently. All these years, I thought I knew you. You do know me, I assured him. The essential me, my values, my love for you, the things that truly matter. The rest is just circumstance. My phone chimed with a calendar alert. We have 15 minutes before the Tokyo call. Just enough time for a quick tour if you're interested. Daniel looked around the vast penthouse at the life his mother had built in parallel to the one he'd always known. Lead the way, he said finally. I want to see everything you've been hiding. As I guided them through my actual home, I felt a weight lifting. The burden of compartmentalization I'd carried for decades gradually easing with each door I opened, each story I shared, each piece of my complete self I finally revealed to my son. This is my office, I said, opening double doors to reveal a space that bore no resemblance to the small desk in the corner of the Queen's apartment where Daniel had seen me paying bills and grading papers for my fictitious night courses. Instead, floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering Manhattan skyline, while 3 large monitors dominated a custom rosewood desk. One wall featured international clocks displaying times in New York, London, Tokyo, Singapore, and São Paulo. Another held framed magazine covers, Fortune, Forbes, Bloomberg Businessweek, all featuring interviews or profiles of me over the years. America's quietest billionaire, Daniel read from one headline, his voice faint. Billionaire? The valuation fluctuates with the market, I replied awkwardly. But yes, with a B? He seemed stuck on this detail. Financial technology is a lucrative field, I said simply, especially if you enter it early and make the right acquisitions. Camilla was examining the photographs arranged on a credenza, images of me with world leaders, tech visionaries, and humanitarian organizations I supported. Is that you with Malala Yousafzai? She asked, pointing to a picture of me with the Nobel Peace Prize winner. We serve on an education initiative together, I confirmed. Brilliant young woman. Daniel moved from the magazine covers to a wall of awards and honorary degrees, recognition I had never displayed in our shared spaces. Presidential Medal of Technology and Innovation, he read, staring at the framed certificate and medal. Mom, this is one of the highest civilian honors in the country. For our work on financial security systems, I explained. It helped prevent several major cyber attacks on banking infrastructure. He turned to face me, expression difficult to read. Were you ever going to tell me any of this? The question hung in the air, weighted with decades of selective truths and compartmentalized lives. Eventually, I admitted. I had planned to explain everything when you turned 35, the age Miguel and I agreed would be appropriate, when you'd be fully established in your own career and identity. Why 35 specifically? It's when you gain access to your trust fund. Another bombshell. Daniel sank into the nearest chair. I have a trust fund? His voice was barely audible. Set up the day you were born, I confirmed. Though with specific conditions that reflect our values. You receive graduated access beginning at 35, provided you've demonstrated commitment to meaningful work and community contribution. How much? He asked, then immediately shook his head. No, don't tell me. This is already too much to process. Enough to secure your future without dictating your choices, I said carefully. Miguel and I were adamant that it should liberate you to do good work, not trap you in golden handcuffs. Camilla had moved to the windows, giving us space for this intensely personal conversation. Her discretion made me appreciate her even more. Daniel stood and walked a slow circle around the office, touching books, examining photographs, absorbing this alternate version of his mother that had existed all along. All those times I worried about you, he said finally. Working late at your office job, taking the subway home alone at night, saving pennies for your retirement. And meanwhile, you were... He gestured around the room at the evidence of my actual professional life. I never meant to cause you worry, I said softly. But your concern for me, it showed character, empathy, the willingness to care for someone you thought had less than you. Those qualities were what Miguel and I hoped to nurture. By letting me believe a lie, by letting you experience a different reality, I countered gently. One where sufficiency was appreciated rather than excess expected. My desk phone chimed softly. 2 minutes to your Tokyo call, Mrs. Rivera, my assistant's voice announced through the speaker. Thank you, Sophia. Please connect when they're ready. Daniel looked at the phone, then back at me. So what happens now? Do we go back to pretending? Sunday dinners in Queens, acting like none of this exists? That's entirely up to you, I told him honestly. Now that you know, we can integrate these separate worlds, or maintain the boundaries that have served us well, or find some middle ground that honors both paths. I need time, Daniel said, to think about what this means, for us, for who I thought we were. Take all the time you need, I assured him. Nothing has to change until you're ready. The desk phone chimed again, and one of the monitors illuminated with the faces of my Tokyo team, waiting for the conference to begin. Do you still want to observe? I asked Daniel. He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I want to see this side of you, the side you've kept hidden. I gestured to comfortable chairs positioned where they could view the monitor without being visible to the camera. Daniel and Camilla settled in as I took my place at the desk, straightening my posture and shifting mentally into the executive mindset that had built a global financial empire. Good evening, Tokyo team, I greeted in flawless Japanese, startling another wide-eyed look from Daniel. Shall we begin? For the next 40 minutes, I led a complex negotiation involving sustainable investment criteria for a major infrastructure project, seamlessly switching between Japanese, English, and occasional Mandarin as different team members contributed. The Daniel and Camilla I was accustomed to, the son who knew me only as a middle-class single mother, the girlfriend just beginning to understand our family dynamic, watched as I directed a discussion involving billions of dollars with the confidence of someone who had been operating at this level for decades. Because, of course, I had been. When the call concluded successfully, I swiveled my chair to face them, suddenly feeling strangely vulnerable. This was the most authentic version of my professional self, yet the one I had kept furthest from my son. So, I said, attempting lightness, that's what I actually do for a living. Daniel shook his head slowly, a mixture of awe and lingering disbelief on his face. You spoke Japanese and Mandarin, and you negotiated environmental protection requirements that most companies would consider impossible, Camilla added, clearly impressed. You made them non-negotiable points. Some principles aren't for sale, I replied, no matter the profit potential. Daniel stood and walked to the windows, gazing out at the city lights. I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time, he said quietly. And yet, the values, the core of who you are, that hasn't changed at all, has it? Not one bit, I confirmed, joining him at the window. Everything you know about what I believe, what I value, how I love, that's all genuine. The only deception was about circumstances, not character. He turned to face me, expression softening. The Sunday dinners in Queens, were those real at least? The stories about your childhood there, your connection to the neighborhood? Absolutely real, I assured him. I did grow up in that neighborhood after we emigrated. Those really were my haunts as a teenager. The apartment belonged to my parents before me. It's where I lived while building RFS from a startup to what it is today. This truth seemed to comfort him. So when we ate empanadas at Doña Carmen's and you chatted with her in Spanish about the old days, that was authentic, I finished for him. Carmen's parents and mine were friends. She really did watch me grow up. The connections to that community aren't pretense. They're the foundation of who I am. Camilla approached, standing slightly apart as if uncertain whether to intrude on this family moment. Your mother created something remarkable, Daniel, she said softly. Not just a business empire, but a way to succeed without losing her humanity or forgetting where she came from. That's extraordinarily rare. Daniel glanced between us, then back to the Tokyo meeting notes still displayed on the monitor. I have about 1,000 more questions, he said finally, and I'll answer every one, I promised, starting with breakfast tomorrow, if you'd like to stay here tonight. There are 3 guest rooms, all prepared. He hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that, to wake up in your actual home, to see this part of your life in daylight. Me too, Camilla added. If that's all right. More than all right, I assured them both. As I showed them to their rooms, I felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. The carefully constructed boundaries of 30 years had dissolved in a single evening. What would rise in their place remained to be seen. But for the first time since Miguel's death, I felt the possibility of true integration, of being wholly myself with the person who mattered most in my life. 3 weeks later, I stood in my penthouse kitchen, carefully stirring a pot of sofrito, the aromatic base of garlic, onions, peppers, and herbs that formed the foundation of my mother's recipes. The familiar ritual centered me as I prepared for this evening's momentous gathering. Tonight would be the first time my traditional Sunday dinner circle would include Daniel as a fully informed participant rather than an occasional guest introduced under limited pretenses. More significantly, he had asked to bring Camilla, and surprisingly, her parents. Since the revelation dinner at Rossi's, much had changed. Daniel had spent days processing his new understanding of our family's actual circumstances, alternating between long conversations with me and periods of reflective silence. We'd toured the Hamptons house, where his father and I had envisioned raising him before Miguel's untimely death. We'd visited my foundation offices, where he'd been startled to discover programs he'd admired professionally had been quietly funded by his own mother. Through it all, Camilla had been his steadfast support, her own privileged background, giving her unique insight into why I'd made the choices I had. "Your mother gave you the greatest gift possible," she'd told him during one particularly difficult conversation. "The chance to become yourself without wealth defining your choices." The Blackwells, meanwhile, had undergone a remarkable transformation in their approach to me. Gone was the condescension, replaced by eager overtures of friendship and respect. Victor had called 3 times with investment opportunities he thought might interest me. Margaret had invited me to join the board of their family's minor arts foundation. I had deflected both politely but firmly. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Thomas's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Rivera, Chef Rossi and Mrs. Rossi have arrived. Send them up, please," I replied, glancing at the clock. Giovanni was characteristically early, probably eager to contribute to the kitchen preparations. The elevator doors opened moments later, revealing Giovanni and Sofia bearing gifts, a bottle of rare Barolo, and a basket of Italian pastries. "Martina!" Giovanni embraced me warmly. "The prodigal son returns with his novia and her parents. Yes? What drama. I brought extra wine in case we need to survive boring Boston conversation." Sofia swatted her son's arm disapprovingly. "Behave yourself, Giovanni. Martina needs support, not mischief." She turned to me with a knowing smile, though I have prepared some special questions about art history to test this Blackwell girl's knowledge. We must ensure she deserves our Daniel. I laughed, grateful for their protective instincts. "Camilla is wonderful, I promise. It's her parents who'll need your scrutiny. The ones who looked down their noses until they knew your bank balance," Sofia scoffed. I remember their type from the early days of our restaurant, checking the prices before checking the menu, judging everyone by their clothes and accents. "People can change," I said diplomatically. "People can pretend," Sofia corrected. "We will see which one it is tonight." As Giovanni unpacked his wine contribution, the elevator chimed again. This time it was James Chen, my old MIT classmate and current venture capital magnate, accompanied by his wife, May, a renowned concert pianist. "The famous dinner that finally includes the truth," James announced, hugging me. "Only took 30 years. Better late than never," May added, presenting me with a small wrapped gift. A little something to mark the occasion. Within 20 minutes, the rest of my inner circle had arrived. Rosa, my first employee and now COO. David, a Nobel-winning economist who had advised me through several market downturns. Elena, the former Secretary of State who had made an appearance at Rossi's that fateful night. And Thomas, my long-serving driver who had become family over the decades. These were the people who knew the real me, not just my success, but the struggles and sacrifices behind it. They had supported me through Miguel's death, celebrated RFS's triumphs, and understood why I'd raised Daniel the way I had. Some had even played assigned roles in his life as Mom's colleagues or family friends, never revealing their actual prominence or their true relationship to me. As we prepared the dining room together, a tradition from leaner days when household staff would have been unthinkable, the elevator chimed once more. "That must be Daniel," I said, straightening my simple linen dress, casual by design, as this dinner had always been about substance over appearance. But when the doors opened, it was the Blackwells who emerged first, Victor and Margaret looking uncomfortably overdressed in formal evening wear. Margaret clutched an ostentatious orchid arrangement, while Victor carried what appeared to be an expensive bottle of champagne. "Martina," Margaret air-kissed near my cheeks, "your home is absolutely stunning. So, understated. I love what you've done with the minimalist approach." Victor thrust the champagne forward. "Dom Perignon, 2008 vintage, exceptional year." Before I could respond, Giovanni materialized beside me. Ah, champagne. Very thoughtful. We will add it to the collection for some future occasion. Tonight we drink Barolo with the Brassato, Brunello with the roast, yes? The menu demands Italian wines. Margaret's smile faltered slightly at this dismissal of their expensive offering, while Victor seemed unsure whether to be offended or impressed by Giovanni's authoritative tone. Victor, Margaret, you remember Giovanni Rossi, I said smoothly. And this is his mother, Sophia, the original culinary genius behind Rossi's. Sophia assessed them with unvarnished directness. You are very formal for a family dinner, she observed. We dress for comfort here, not for photographs. Margaret glanced down at her designer dress, then at my simple linen attire and Sophia's practical pants and tunic. We weren't sure of the protocol. The protocol is authenticity, James Chen interjected, joining our group. Martina's Sunday dinners are about connection, not impression management. I made the remaining introductions quickly, watching the Blackwells' expressions shift as they realized they were suddenly in a room with people whose combined influence dwarfed Boston's entire social register. Elena's diplomatic background, however, came to the rescue as she skillfully guided them toward easier conversation topics. The elevator chimed again, and this time it was Daniel and Camilla. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, his standard Sunday attire for our Queen's dinners. She had clearly taken his cue, dressed in a casual sundress that looked comfortable rather than calculated. Mom, Daniel embraced me warmly. Sorry we're late. We stopped at Doña Carmen's for dessert. He held up a familiar white bakery box. Tres leches cake. She sends her love. This simple gesture, honoring our Queen's tradition even as we gathered in the penthouse, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Perfect, I managed, squeezing his hand in gratitude. Camilla hugged me next. Everything smells amazing. Can I help with anything? Just be yourself, I told her quietly. That's all we ask at these dinners. As Daniel made his way around the room, greeting my friends with the comfortable familiarity of someone who had known them his entire life, because, of course, he had, I observed Margaret watching her daughter interact easily with this distinguished group. Camilla seems very at home here, I commented, joining her. She's always been adaptable, Margaret replied, her tone suggesting this quality had often frustrated her. Though, I admit I never expected her to fit so naturally into this world. Because you assumed Daniel came from less? Margaret had the grace to look embarrassed. I made assumptions I now regret. We all make judgments based on incomplete information, I allowed. The test of character is how we adjust when new information emerges. Before she could respond, Sophia announced that dinner was ready. We moved to the dining table, a long rustic piece that Miguel and I had found at a flea market decades ago, now surrounded by an eclectic collection of chairs that told the story of our evolving circle. As everyone found their places, I remained standing at the head of the table, suddenly overcome with the significance of the moment. For 30 years, I had maintained separate lives, the successful business titan and the middle-class single mother. Now those worlds were colliding with my son at the intersection. Before we begin, I said, raising my glass, I want to toast to new beginnings and old truths. To my son Daniel, who has shown remarkable grace as his understanding of our family has expanded. And to all of you who have respected and supported our choices through the years. Daniel raised his glass in return. And to my mother, who taught me that true wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with values. As we clinked glasses, I caught Camilla watching her parents' reactions. Victor seemed genuinely moved, while Margaret appeared to be reassessing something fundamental in her worldview. The conversation flowed easily as we passed platters family style, another tradition that clearly surprised the Blackwells, who were accustomed to formal service at gatherings of this caliber. Topics ranged from global economics to local politics, from art exhibitions to scientific breakthroughs, with everyone contributing regardless of professional background. I noticed Daniel explaining something to Victor with animated gestures, while Camilla and Elena were deep in conversation about cultural preservation. Even Margaret seemed to be genuinely engaged with Sophia's stories about early immigrant experiences in New York. Halfway through the meal, Giovanni stood dramatically. I propose another toast, to truth revealed and pretenses abandoned. May we all have the courage to be genuine, even when it's inconvenient. His pointed glance toward the Blackwells wasn't subtle, but they raised their glasses nonetheless. To authenticity, Victor echoed, meeting my eyes directly for perhaps the first time, and to lessons in humility, which some of us needed more than others. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of their initial condescension, but it was a beginning, a recognition that something in their perspective had shifted. As the evening progressed into dessert and coffee, I found Daniel beside me on the terrace, both of us momentarily escaping the lively group inside. "So," he said, watching the city lights below, "this is what Sunday dinners have really been all along. Not just you and me eating mofongo in Queens, but this extended family you created. Different settings, same values," I replied. "The people gathered here tonight have been my support system since before you were born. They understood why I raised you the way I did, away from all this. I understand it now too," he said quietly. "And I'm grateful, Mom, not just for the material security you provided without my knowledge, but for the freedom to become myself without the burden of expectations that wealth often brings." He glanced back through the windows at Camilla, laughing with James and May. "I think that's why Camilla and I connected so deeply. She's been fighting against those golden handcuffs her whole life. She's remarkable," I agreed. "And her parents are learning," Daniel finished for me. "Slowly, but learning nonetheless." As we rejoined the group for coffee, I watched the easy interaction of these formerly separate worlds, my professional circle, my son, his girlfriend, and even the once judgmental Blackwells, all finding common ground in authentic conversation. The compartmentalization of 30 years had dissolved, replaced by something more integrated, more honest, and ultimately more liberating for us all. Miguel would have approved. Thank you very much for listening. Please leave a comment with a rating from 0 to 10, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with a friend.
Chuyện hôm nay, mình muốn dành thêm một chút thời gian để nói chuyện với bạn một cách thật chậm và thật lòng. Bởi vì những câu chuyện như thế này, nó sẽ không kết thúc khi video kết thúc. Nó ở lại, ở trong cách chúng ta suy nghĩ, ở trong cách chúng ta cảm nhận, và đôi khi ở trong cách chúng ta bắt đầu nhìn nhận nhau theo một cách khác. Câu chuyện hôm nay là về tình yêu, nhưng không chỉ là tình yêu đơn thuần. Đó là tình yêu phải đi qua khác biệt, đi qua những nghi ngờ, đi qua cả những rào cản mà thế giới đôi khi vô tình tạo ra. Và có lẽ chính vì vậy nó trở nên đặc biệt. Bởi vì nó không hoàn hảo, không dễ dàng, nhưng lại rất thật, theo một cách nào đó chạm đến những điều sâu bên trong mỗi chúng ta, mong muốn được kết nối, được thấu hiểu và được nhìn nhận đúng với con người mình. Và trước khi nói tiếp, mình cũng muốn chia sẻ một điều rất quan trọng. Mình biết rằng mình không phải là một người phụ nữ da đen, và mình cũng hiểu rằng những trải nghiệm, những cảm xúc, những câu chuyện đã truyền cảm hứng cho nội dung của kênh không phải là điều mình trực tiếp sống qua. Vì vậy, mình không kể những câu chuyện này với suy nghĩ rằng mình có thể đại diện cho họ. Mình kể vì mình tôn trọng. Mình kể vì mình tin rằng trong những câu chuyện đó có vẻ đẹp, có sức mạnh và có cả những giá trị xứng đáng được lan tỏa, ngay cả khi chúng ta đến từ những nền tảng khác nhau. Nhưng mình cũng hiểu với một số bạn, điều đó có thể khiến bạn cảm thấy không thoải mái. Và thật lòng mà nói, cảm giác đó là hoàn toàn hợp lý. Bởi vì những câu chuyện này không chỉ là giải trí, chúng gắn với lịch sử thật, những khó khăn thật, những cảm xúc thật. Nên mình luôn cố gắng không bao giờ tiếp cận chúng một cách hời hợt. Mọi thứ trên kênh này, dù là hư cấu, đều được xây dựng từ sự cẩn trọng, từ việc học hỏi, từ việc lắng nghe, từ việc cố gắng thấu hiểu. Dù mình biết rằng mình sẽ không bao giờ hiểu hết được tất cả mọi thứ. Và điều đó rất là quan trọng với mình, bởi vì mình không ở đây để nói thay ai cả. Mình cũng không ở đây để thay thế cho tiếng nói của bất kỳ ai. Mình ở đây như một người kể chuyện, một người tin rằng nếu câu chuyện được kể bằng sự tôn trọng và chân thành thì nó có thể tạo ra sự kết nối thay vì chia rẽ. Và điều đó thực sự có ý nghĩa với mình. Mình cũng muốn bạn biết rằng mình luôn học hỏi. Mỗi bình luận, mỗi góc nhìn, mỗi phản hồi mình đều đọc, đều suy nghĩ và cố gắng cải thiện. Vì vậy nếu có điều gì mình làm chưa tốt, mình luôn sẵn sàng lắng nghe. Không phải để tranh luận, không phải để bảo vệ cái tôi, mà là để hiểu hơn và làm tốt hơn. Bởi vì cuối cùng, kênh này không phải là chỉ về mình. Nó là về những gì chúng ta có thể cùng cảm nhận được. Là về một không gian nơi tình yêu không bị giới hạn bởi màu da, bởi định kiến hay bởi những khuôn mẫu mà xã hội đặt ra. Là về việc cho thấy rằng sự kết nối, một sự kết nối thực sự, có thể tồn tại ngay cả trong những hoàn cảnh mà người ta nghĩ là không thể. Và có lẽ thế giới này cần nhiều điều đó hơn nữa, nhiều sự thấu hiểu hơn, nhiều sự đồng cảm hơn, nhiều sự cởi mở hơn để nhìn nhau như những con người trước khi nhìn vào sự khác biệt. Vì vậy, khi bạn xem xong video này, mình không chỉ muốn bạn nhớ câu chuyện, mình muốn bạn nhớ cảm giác mà nó mang lại, những khoảnh khắc khiến bạn dừng lại, những khoảnh khắc khiến bạn suy nghĩ, bởi vì chính những điều đó mới thực sự có ý nghĩa. Nó nhắc chúng ta rằng dù chúng ta khác nhau về xuất phát điểm, về văn hóa, về trải nghiệm, chúng ta vẫn có thể kết nối với nhau theo những cách vượt qua tất cả những điều đó. Và đó là một điều rất mạnh mẽ. Nếu câu chuyện này đã chạm đến bạn, dù chỉ một chút thôi, thì cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều vì đã ở lại đây với mình. Cảm ơn các bạn vì đã lắng nghe, đã cảm nhận và đã là một phần của không gian này. Và mình hy vọng các bạn sẽ tiếp tục đồng hành cùng mình trong những câu chuyện tiếp theo. Những câu chuyện về tình yêu, về sự can đảm và về sức mạnh của việc dám kết nối trong một thế giới đầy rào cản. Hẹn gặp lại các bạn ở những câu chuyện tiếp theo. Hãy giữ cho trái tim mình luôn rộng mở và đừng bao giờ đánh giá thấp sức mạnh của một tình yêu dám vượt qua mọi giới hạn.